Hi guys, this is Ankit Madan. I hope you are doing great. So let's get started with today's editorial. Now, in this particular article, it is all about analyzing whether this pandemic situation is actually a blessing in a disguise for farmers or not. So let's get more deeper into it. Now, as you can see, here is a news which says that this pandemic situation has actually resulted in reduction in the farmer suicide rates. Now, according to this pandemic situation, what is happening is, if I talk about pre-pandemic scenario, as you can see here, it is mentioned about the statistics. Probably 40 to 42 farmers commit suicide every month, and if I talk about post-pandemic scenario, it is mentioned that 12 to 13 farmers are committing suicide every month. Now, here the main question arises is that why there is so much reduction due to this pandemic situation. Now, before coming on to the scenario about why this pandemic has led to reduction, let's discuss what is the main reason for committing suicide by the farmers. See, what happens is, according to the reports, the main reason for committing suicide by the farmer is their debt. Because what happens is, these farmers are particularly being exploited by the intermediaries and specifically the private lenders who exploit them by charging high rate of interest from the farmers. Why? Because these farmers don't get rational number of loans from the banks, and as a result they need to get shifted to private lenders and intermediaries, and due to which they are not able to pay the amount, not even principal as well as interest, and as a result they don't have any other option apart from committing suicide. And as you can see here, the figures are mentioned that 2528 cases during the last 4 years is about committing suicide, right? Now, coming on to the another thing, that what are the main reasons for declining. Now, see, what is happening is that there are various incentives and the schemes which are being introduced by the government in order to cope up with the market scenario to overcome this pandemic situation. The first thing is it is about spending which is being made by government, because as you have watched my last video where I have mentioned that probably 3 crore people have been migrated from urban areas to rural areas, right? Now, in order to cope up with that market scenario, the spendings of the people have been reduced to essentials. They are not able to cope up with they are not even making expenditure on apart from essentials. Also, another aspect is that the perception and the expectations of the people that government will help farmer to come out of the debt during such financial crisis, and probably expecting such things to cope up with the market scenario is pretty much rational and a prominent aspect also. It is not over expectations by the people that this pandemic situation, that government will help us to overcome in such a scenario. Also, another aspect is that when this lockdown started, the government has made an announcement that the people need not to pay their debts and the installments which are to be paid by the farmers to the private lenders and the banks. Now, that particular announcement by the government has somehow the other made the farmers to get some relief, and so that they can fulfill their basic necessities of the life. Also, as I mentioned about postponement and of the installment, now also another aspect is about humiliation. See, what happens is, when the farmers are not able to pay out their debts, it is very difficult for them to survive, and they need to face the humiliations by private money lenders to cope up with to cope up with that situation. They don't have any other choice because they are not financially viable enough to pay their debts, and as a result they need to commit suicide. And if that situation is eliminated, obviously it will be resulting their increase in the lives and reduction in suicide rates. Also, another scenario is, since this lockdown has no resulted in conducting no any such official events, so marriages and other official things is not happening. As a result, the expenditure which were incurred by farmers or the people were not enough. So as a result, there is not any restrictions for conducting a scenario, which has resulted in financial viability of farmers and the people who are below poverty line. Also, another thing is, see, as we are very much familiar with this fact that this pandemic has actually resulted in making actually resulted in loss of reduction in suicide rates. But do you really think so that it is going to be sustainable enough? Okay, fine, the government has paying, providing incentives and all those facilities so that people can survive in this during this pandemic situation. But what happens is when the things gonna get normal, and according to the reports, it is being said that when things will be normal, the banks and the private money lenders will be charging huge rate of interest because they don't want to bear the losses. Now, in that situation, do you think so that people and the farmers will be able to pay out their debts and the installments and the huge amount of interest which is being charged to them? Also, bank might use aggressive policies and the measures in order to make out the debts and to overcome theirs, to make the payments out of the farmers. It is very difficult for them to survive after this scenario. Now, I would like to conclude this thing that see, according to statistics, is probably 1 lakh crore debt of the farmer is in the Punjab, right? And probably 34% of the people are from non-institutional bodies. And as I already mentioned you this thing that they are the intermediaries and the private money lenders. They are charging huge rate of interest, probably 28 to 30%, and they are not even financially viable enough to pay out their debts. Now, in order to overcome that situation, it is very mandatory for the government that they should have a proper control over the private money lenders and private banks, so that they are not able to exploit the farmers and the medium farmers. And also, we can say this thing that at least for a once, the government should provide some sort of waive off or incentive to small mediums farmers, so that they can actually survive in this particular situation. And so this was all about my analysis. In case you think there should be another aspect which should be covered, do put it on comment section. Thank you so much.